You've watched the line. 10 people deep, cash moving fast, the owner looking like they can't keep up with demand. You've thought, this is it. This is the business. Low overhead, no rent, just park somewhere with foot traffic and print money. Here's the number the line never shows you. Roughly 40% of food trucks close within their first 3 years. And some industry trackers, looking specifically at year 1 alone, put the failure rate as high as 60%. Not because people can't cook, because almost nobody budgets for the business that's actually hiding behind the truck. Today, we follow the real math and find out exactly where that money goes to die. On paper, this looks like the smartest possible way into the restaurant industry. No 20-year lease, no $2 million build-out, no fixed location betting your entire business on one street corner forever. You buy a truck, you park where the people are, and if a location doesn't work, you drive somewhere else tomorrow. Flexibility that a brick-and-mortar restaurant owner would kill for. And the profit margins genuinely back this up on the surface. Food trucks average 6 to 9% net margins, sometimes reported as high as 15% for a lean owner-operator setup. Compare that to a full-service restaurant, which is frequently fighting to clear 3 to 5% after rent, and the food truck looks like the obviously smarter bet. Total startup cost sits at $50,000 to $200,000, a fraction of what a real restaurant build-out costs before you've sold a single plate. It's flexible, it's cheaper to start, and it feels like a business you could actually run yourself, with your own hands, without needing a bank to believe in you first. Here's what that $50,000 to $200,000 actually buys. The truck itself is the headline number, $20,000 to $100,000 used, $75,000 to $200,000 new, depending on how much kitchen you're cramming into it. That's before the kitchen equipment, which runs another $10,000 to $40,000 on top. Add permits, initial inventory, insurance, and a POS system, and you land in that $50,000 to $200,000 range every single cost guide converges on. Now here's the part almost nobody prices in before they sign anything: the commissary kitchen. In most cities, health codes require food trucks to prep and store food in a licensed commercial kitchen space when they're not actively serving. You can't just cook out of a garage. That's $400 to $1,500 a month, every month, whether you sold anything that day or not. Then permits. And this is where the math gets genuinely unpredictable depending on where you live. Some cities, like Indianapolis, charge under $600 a year in total permit fees. Boston operators doing the exact same business can face over $17,000 a year. Same truck, same menu, same hustle, a permit bill more than 25 times higher, purely based on which city line you happen to park inside. And then there's the number that actually kills more trucks than any of the above: working capital. Industry trackers are blunt about this. You need at least 3 months of operating expenses in reserve, roughly $24,000 to $60,000, sitting untouched before you serve your first customer. Not spent on the truck, not spent on the fryer, sitting there waiting for the slow month that always eventually comes. A broken transmission, a rained-out weekend, a permit renewal you forgot was due. Most first-time operators spend every dollar they have on the truck and the kitchen and walk in with zero cushion left. That's not a minor oversight. That's the single most cited cause of failure in every serious breakdown of this industry. So if the margins are genuinely fine and the industry is genuinely growing, the US food truck market has been expanding by roughly 17% a year, why does closer to 40% of the entire industry still not make it past year 3? It's not the food. It's not even usually the location, though a bad one makes everything else worse. It's that almost nobody in this business actually knows their own numbers. Revenue is not profit. And this industry is full of operators who confuse the two. A truck can be doing $500,000 a year in top-line revenue and still be barely breaking even because food costs are eating 40% of every sale, labor is unchecked, and nobody's tracking which events are actually profitable versus which ones just feel busy. A festival that charges you a $200 vendor fee and generates $800 in sales sounds fine, until you realize that at a typical 30% margin, you just worked an entire event for $40 of actual profit. The operators who survive treat this like a numbers business first and a food business second. They know their exact food cost percentage, their exact labor cost, their exact profit per event. Not roughly, exactly. They say no to events that don't hit a real revenue threshold instead of showing up to anything with a permit slot open. And critically, they build recurring revenue instead of living event to event. Catering contracts and standing weekly corporate lunch spots where margins run 50 to 60% instead of leaning entirely on random street corner walk-up traffic at 10 to 20% margins. The trucks that fail are the ones treating every day like a gamble on foot traffic. The trucks that survive are the ones that turned a mobile kitchen into a business with contracts, reserves, and a spreadsheet, which, ironically, is the exact opposite of the be-your-own-boss, no-rules fantasy that got most people into this in the first place. So, is a food truck a good business? Genuinely? Yes, for the right person, with the right amount of unglamorous discipline behind it. The margins are real. The lower barrier to entry compared to a restaurant is real. Operators who track their numbers and build recurring catering relationships are out there quietly making this work every single day. But if you're picturing this as a low-effort way to be your own boss with minimal risk, that version doesn't exist, and the 40% closure rate is exactly what happens to the people chasing it. This is a full operating business wearing a lower price tag, not a shortcut around one. If you've got $150,000, the discipline to hold back a real cash reserve instead of spending it all on the truck, and you're willing to treat every event like a numbers problem instead of a vibe, this can work. If any part of that sounds like more structure than you wanted, the truck isn't your problem to solve. The spreadsheet is. Have you ever looked into starting a food truck? What almost talked you into it? Or out of it? Tell us in the comments.